Welcome to Let's Talk Geek, episode 114 for Wednesday, the 14th of November, 2012. I'm Brett Haggard. I would like to entitle this episode, The ZA Tech Show Takes Over Let's Talk Geek. With me tonight, Tim Haak, Gerrit Vermeulen, and Jan Vermeulen.
Hi there.
We're going to be talking about Android, Windows 8, and our love-hate relationship with it. And then maybe cross-platform app development on a budget, which would, again, map back to the Android and Windows 8 debate we're going to have tonight.
So thank you very much, Brett. And for those of you that are epically confused, Brett does a podcast called ZA Tech Show, runs on Mondays.
Indeed.
So go check that out. Do you want to give the URL up quick, Brett?
Yeah, absolutely. zatech.co.za. Every Monday night, 7 p.m. is
They
when
actually
we
start
stream.
on time?
Yeah, well, roughly. Within 5 minutes of our recording. We get there half an hour early, though, and patch cables together and peel sticky tape off of stuff. But yeah, it's streamed live, and then it's obviously available on iTunes and from our website and from Stitcher, and I think we're on some other radio thing sometime soon as well. So yeah, there's a couple of places you can find it.
Cool bananas. So first up, as we try to do as often as possible, there is a random in today's show. Gerrit, was this you?
I think it was, but I can't remember exactly where I found it. We haven't had a show in a couple of weeks, so this was around about the time of Halloween. And the random is from QI. And it says, if every zombie but one new person per day, starting with just one zombie, the entire world would be zombified in just 34 days.
That's pretty cool.
Very impressive.
So just over a month, and we're all zombies.
Absolutely not, dude. Because I've already got my zombie apocalypse plan completely sorted. I have cans of food in my basement. I've got shotgun shells. It's going to be that number minus 3.
And my thing with this is if that 3 is really early on in the beginning, then that skews the whole number system because you wouldn't be biting other people yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's what the problem is as you start biting, the pool of available people to bite decreases, and then you can't keep up that pace.
And you have just uncovered the intricacies of engineering versus the theoretical perfection of math.
Engineering rules.
What he said.
You mean real life versus fiction?
And you are assuming that you can outsmart the zombies.
Which
Zombies.
Okay, look,
Not
it's a
always the
zombie,
best.
dude, all right? Zombies pretty much got one thought running through its head. It's eat
Brains.
someone, right? And then thought 2 is am I a shambler? Am I a runner? And what's the other,
Or am I a spitter,
Yes.
a smoker, a
there are
tank?
more? Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You guys have been playing too many zombie
Okay,
games.
question. I need to ask you. It's a very important question. It is of worldly importance. What kind of zombie would you choose to be if you had to choose, a class of zombie?
Can I choose from any mythology?
Absolutely, go.
Juju zombie, Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh. You pig.
Good call.
Yeah. Tim?
I don't know my zombie lore very well, but I'm trying to think.
So, there's a Ramiro zombie.
What's the movies that are on with
There's
Milo, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And she was technically a zombie because she got bit by the virus, but
Yeah,
she's still
the
intelligent.
T-virus. Yeah, exactly. That's Resident Evil.
Yes, Alice.
Sweet. That's not a bad zombie to be either.
I guess I'm left with Left 4 Dead.
That's an option, but it's not the only zombie game out there.
Yeah, I'm confused. I'm left with the bad options, but probably something like a hunter.
Okay. Hunter zombie. Sweet.
Hunters do the bouncy
Yourself?
thing.
Cool.
It's
From
I
really
Left 4
don't. I just asked the question.
No. You have to give an answer. This is required.
Okay, so I would totally be a shambler, but only if I was pre-armor plated before infected, all right? Because the nice thing is, shamblers just keep on coming. You know what I'm
So-
saying? They just keep on coming. The problem is they're kind of soft and squishy, so a well-aimed weapon can completely sort them out. So you'd want to be armored with just your
So kind of in
mouth parts exposed,
In Left 4
right?
Dead, you have the riot cop zombies, kind of like that.
This is even more.
Yeah, even
hardcore
more.
than that.
I'm talking like medieval suit of armor with a little thing hitched up the front so that just my mouth parts are exposed and I can bite.
So a night zombie.
Get
Yes.
the crossbows.
Or even
medieval night shambler zombie.
So decapitation is hard. and getting through to the head is hard.
Absolutely. You're going to have to like shoot me through the mouth, but remember, you've got to take the brain out, which is the...
But get the crossbows.
Is the key. Absolutely.
I was going to say, just be the zombie at the back of the horde. Take everybody else out.
Be the zombie that arrives just after. Click.
So, in that case, be the young zombie.
I'm always late.
Always late.
Excellent.
Exactly.
That was funny. All right. So
Jan's fault.
there are still quite a bit of events coming up for the rest of the year. Check out stardates.co.za for all your geek event needs. Not going to spend too much time on that because we have a lot of show to get through. So you can, by the way, if you're just joining us, join us on IRC, irc.ltnet.tv. And if you've got a proper IRC client, you can go to that URL, port 6667, #LTNet is the channel.
Port.
Yes, the default port.
Neighbor of the beast.
Exactly, and pull into IRC. With that, Google announces all the things, despite having to cancel their New York event because of that massive Hurricane Sandy that tore New York to shreds.
Not hurricane. I think they degraded it to superstorm or something along that line.
Okay, well, it still knocked out New York's power, which is pretty
Yeah,
impressive.
it still had
Scary
parts
storm.
of what was it Manhattan, like the bottom part of Manhattan was pretty much just dead, and I'm
Yeah.
going to keep knocking this thing tonight.
There was some spooky photos. I think Hurricane
Yeah.
Sandy sounds so much better instead of like Superstorm Sandy.
Yeah. Well, at least
An
it alliterates.
alliteration. Yeah, there we go.
All right, so first up, Android
Well,
4.2.
They had a couple of announcements. So they had two big hardware announcements, and then the one big software announcement. Android 4.2 is the first one.
So let's talk about how big it is, because
It's not that big.
because they've still called it Jelly Bean,
yes,
which
they
is
haven't
epically
even changed the name.
Yeah, it's so confusing because people tell me, "Hey, Jan, when's the Jelly Bean upgrade coming?" And I have to go, "Which Jelly Bean upgrade?" Because there's some
It is
devices
confusing.
which don't have 4.1 yet.
It's the same thing that we had with, was it Froyo? Version 2.0 and 2.1 had the same deal.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So it's the same kind of thing with that. They just didn't
How much
have
has
a launch
actually
event.
changed? I mean, have they
Well-
changed anything interface-wise? I mean, I don't get that deep into it.
So far, not a lot. They have added some quick settings,
All right.
so stuff
From-
like that.
Okay.
I know
I've
from what
got
I
it running on-
saw with you playing with it, they've tweaked minor things, but you know those minor things that you don't notice so much, but when you start using it, just all of a sudden things are suddenly
Yeah,
smooth
but
and
easy.
easier.
couple of animation changes.
ICS wasn't that big a leap.
No, ICS was a big leap from Gingerbread, but Jelly
but I'm
Bean
saying
wasn't
Jelly
a big
Bean was
leap
like
from
a,
ICS.
yeah, and it was
In terms of
but
interface.
It just got coherent. Things
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
got
And
things just started making sense.
Things got a
right?
lot
Yeah.
smoother.
So let's
Yeah.
talk about the thing that excites me the most: multi-user support on tablets. All right, so I know we haven't had a chance to play with
That's
it.
cool.
Is it
works on the
running on your
Nexus
Nexus 7?
7, yes.
Okay, so have you given it a whirl?
I have not.
Okay, so because I'm interested to find out how that stacks up to the features that some of the other guys. BlackBerry is promising with the BlackBerry 10 OS. They're promising also a type of multi-user support with, like, they call it balance,
Yeah, but-
work and personal.
But as far as I understand, that actually has something to do with like webcam type stuff. So that it's actually going to look through the camera. At least this is one of the rumors that I picked up on, that the camera will actually do a fair amount of facial recognition. And if you're unrecognized, it'll switch to a like guest
Like
or
a
safe
guest
kind
mode.
of like sandbox space. Which is kind
Okay.
of
So quite bad for November.
Indeed. No,
Sorry.
well, you just then you can type your pin in and take a new photo of yourself, and then at the end of November have to change it again. But
It sounds, a bit like profile switching.
Yeah. Well, it just has but it's limited. So I wanted to know how many profiles you could set up on the tablet.
I haven't tried.
Then the other thing that also has multi-user support is Windows Phone, which has Kids Corner.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Which is a very specific kind of multi-user.
It's more like that has a guest mode.
Yes,
That's basically
but it's
what-
not quite
why
a guest
they call
mode.
it Kids Corner is kind of confusing because it's not Kids Corner.
Yeah,
So that
but
your kids
it's not.
want to use
What
your
grates
Yeah.
my cheese a little about that is you still need to set up a pin, and the pin needs to be entered for you to go into Kids Corner.
No. Okay, so the demo that I saw of that was interesting. So the pin is used to unlock the phone normally, all right? You can do a side swipe, which will immediately take you into Kids Corner. So if a kid picks up that phone, right, you don't need to be there for them to get into Kids Corner and start making use
That's
of
what
Kids Corner.
Microsoft
That's
told
how
me
I
at the
understood
event
it as well.
Okay, that's what.
But then
Okay,
again,
I've got
I
a
mean,
device in my bag. I'm going to do that right now while we discuss the rest of the stuff.
So just go and activate the Kids Corner first, because that's the one thing you've got to activate in settings. But yeah, there was a lot of stuff in that briefing that was all over the show.
question. Going back to the Android with thing, SD card access.
What do you mean SD card access?
For the guest.
Limited, yes, absolutely. I think that's a good point.
That's
Because
something
to me,
worth checking out.
that's more important. Is I don't want my guests or
To be able
somebody
to access-
else to have that. But for that, you need some separation. Now, SD cards
Absolutely.
normally fully accessible.
Well, what they've done, as I understand it, for your internal, I don't know if it works for SD card, but your internal storage.
Yeah.
They partition that into different partitions. So your first user is going to be SD card /0.
Okay.
The second user is going to be SD card /1, so they number those. And then the specific user that logs in only has access to that section of of the
quotas.
Not sure.
So I'm just starting to think, once you actually get into multi-user, these are all the things you start worrying about.
I think the reality, I don't know the answer to any of this, but I would assume, just looking at historically how Android has evolved, you're going to find that it probably doesn't tick all of those boxes initially.
But
and then they're going to,
but they'll iterate
very
quickly.
Active community. There's going to be a lot of feedback and stuff like that. So, it's going to come very, very quickly.
I'd figure if you don't have it now, you'll have it in CyanogenMod in 3 months.
I'm sure. Also,
And
the
then they'll start
underlying
incorporating it into
pinnings are
the main
Linux,
feed.
which have all of these things.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, strangely enough, when I heard about the multi-user support in Android that I actually got quite excited about, because Unix has got a fantastic ability to start with everything off, and then you can enable things as you go along, which is nice. Very, 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 very granular support in terms of like super user access and root access and that kind of stuff, which is rad. I could see a lot of use in switching off all of the settings and all of that kind of stuff for my kids, right? That would be really
Definitely,
really cool.
Yeah, and like having a certain set of apps that they can use that you just dump on the home
and it's
screen.
a massive differentiator if you look at tablets specifically. I don't think as much for smartphones, but tablets, parents tend to give their tablets to their kids to play with. I don't want my kid sending an email to my boss with a webcam capture of him screaming into the cam or something like that. Not that my kids would do that, but that's the kind of scenario that could present.
You can
itself.
see that happening.
So
It sounds, yeah.
The one that the feature that got me a bit excited today was Photosphere. So Google have changed up things in the camera and added some features. Photosphere is the similar kind of technology as what they have in the Street View cars.
Right.
So as you go with Street View, you have these wonderful 360 images of what's going on in the street. And I actually played with it today and posted the picture to my Google Plus page, because that's how we roll. And it works really smoothly. You set it up the first time, you center it, and then from there you can pan up, down, left, right, and then it gives you a little point. Go here. And you center on that point, takes a picture, and then when you're done, you just say you're done, and it starts stitching them together. So you can take a full 360
Did you see with
image.
the stitching, it even does your color correction, so you can't actually... normally when you stitch, you get all the slightly different
absolutely.
You get the
variations.
slightly different variations. So if you have
don't see
some weird
that.
brightness, or you had a funky lighting effect, it took care of all of that, and you can actually see like those things. You can see that in the photos that you take, that it puts on there, and then the finished product looks really good. There are some stitching errors. You can see over here it's stitched, and I took a photo of the sidewalk. It was part of the photo, so I had some people in the distance, and then I took a second photo later on where they were in more towards me. So I have the people in the distance, and then his feet in the photo, which is kind of cool.
random.
But it's really simple to play with, and it's this really powerful tech that they have in their Street View cars that they've brought to a mobile device.
So a lot of people kind of go, that's absolutely rad. I mean, if you look at it, I think what's radder is to just examine for a second how they get that right. And it's because there's this gigantic data center sitting at the back end with an almost infinite source of processing power. It just gives you an inkling of what we can expect in the next couple of years. When you it's like throw a task at this like infinite compute engine and go here, and it does stuff.
Look, on a side, I don't know if you saw any of their big query stuff. I don't know if you've seen that, and that shows you just the compute power, where they're running these queries in real time with no indexing. That even with indexing would take a couple of hours or something, and they're returning it in a couple of seconds. And they talk about like, oh no, that's like a couple thousand servers.
You're talking about the company that doesn't bother to fix anything in its data center. It just throws it away and replaces it with new stuff. It's mind-blowing stuff.
Yeah. I do want to move us on, but to finish up the discussion. So I fired up a Windows 8 device, which we'll hopefully talk about in future. So there's my lock screen password. And if you do swipe to the side, wrong side, come on.
There we go.
There's Kids Corner. And you just swipe up. So I don't know why the demo they showed us asked for a password on Kids Corner, but it definitely did. And when I asked them about it, they definitely said, yes, the password has to be entered on both screens, which really struck me as odd. This makes more sense.
If you're going to give it to a kid, the chance of a kid remembering a 4-digit number, considering the fact that they're not very literate or numerate a lot of the time.
It depends on the age, but yeah, absolutely. And also, I don't want to have to supervise them. So a couple of other features we don't get a chance to discuss right now is Miracast support, gesture typing,
which is
swipe, really cool.
Kind of swipe, yeah.
And the rest we've basically covered.
We haven't covered lock screen widgets.
Yes, lock screen widgets.
Widgets on the lock screen. Unfortunately, it's not all widgets supported out the box. App developers have to put a couple of lines of code in their manifest.
That's similar to the changes made by Microsoft to Windows.
It makes sense because you don't necessarily want all widgets available on the lock screen.
Sure. I want to talk about the hardware that Google's unveiled. And
so much of exciting.
Yeah, and South Africa and like the confusion. There's some uncertainty and some disappointing certainty about these devices for the South African market. So perhaps we should start with the most disappointing, which is the Nexus 4.
Nexus 4.
From a South African perspective, and maybe from a Android aficionado perspective. So take us through it. What do you think about the Nexus 4?
There is very little about the Nexus 4 that I don't like. But the deal breaker for me is, okay, it's an LG device. We have a Snapdragon S4 quad-core processor clocked at 1.5 gigahertz.
That's impressive.
Insane. 2 gigs of RAM, also freaking insane. 8 gigs or 16 gigs of storage, no SD card because it's a Nexus device. That's how they roll. 8 megapixel camera, which is a bump up from the Galaxy Nexus, on par with pretty much everything out there. And the thing that everyone else in the US goes on and on about is that it doesn't have LTE, which for us in South Africa doesn't make
no big whoop
not a big
now.
whoop at the moment. Talk to me in a year or two. And the thing that kind of destroys it for me is it's made of glass, front and back.
Like the iPhone 4.
Like the iPhone 4, and apparently like the Optimus G, which it's obviously based on. It has Gorilla Glass 2 on the back, which, yes, Gorilla Glass is strong. At least one review that I read, the guy did manage to knock it off the table somewhere, and it cracked, so not too bad. The one other review that I read today, it's susceptible to like micro scratches. So you put it on a surface, it's going to get a little bit scratchy over time, and you might just notice that.
Well, the problem with these things generally is once you scratch them, though, they break very easily.
I can't confirm that.
Look, I don't know. I just know some of the other
glass.
things.
It's going to feel fragile, and I'm scared if I drop that thing on pretty much anything, it's going to shatter. And once it shatters, what do I do now? I can't take it back because we can't get it in South Africa. So will it have an international warranty that I'll be able to use? Probably not. And even if I did, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else wanted to chime in on hardware.
I
was going to say, my main thing that still with these phones that I was talking to Gerrit about is why only 8 and 16? Where's the 32?
For that, they should have a 32 gig option, but the 8 and 16, 8 gig model is $300, 16 gig model is $350. There's why it's 8 and 16, because they are selling this at a wonderful price.
There's no SD card capabilities, and I know on my S3, I've filled my 16 gigs already.
Yeah, so there should be a bigger one. I'd give it a bit.
I am the exception. Look, I'm a power
There's
user.
a lot of drooling over the Nexus 4 and the IRC.
I'm going to chime in here with an explanation.
Okay.
And it's something that I only noticed after spending a couple of weeks in the US with my friend, all right? You don't need local storage because
with all the streaming that they have.
Because you've got this fantastic thing called the cloud, and you've got this other fantastic thing called like uncapped data packages
and Wi-Fi everywhere.
So the reality is, he literally doesn't. If he takes photos, they go straight into his cloud storage. Like, over the air. Music, he does not have music on his device. He uses Spotify. And he's in his car.
Cache anything locally.
And he's driving for like 2 hours, and he's streaming Spotify or a podcast or whatever. If you think about it, it starts becoming very, very intuitive in terms of you can really just live in the moment. In terms of, I want to consume this piece of content now. So you do. You don't have to plan a couple of hours or a couple of days in advance in terms of what you want to consume while you're out on the road. At the same time, you never need to worry. It also makes services like Google Plus and all of that stuff very easy to use because you just take a pick and share, take a pick and share, take a pick and share. I remember I was actually chatting to you about this when I got ice cream sandwich on my Nexus, on my Galaxy Nexus, right? I went to the park with my kids. And there I'm happily shooting photos. Next minute, you've charged through 150 mega data in like an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, because it was just shunting these like gigantic multi-megapixel photos up into the cloud. So So that's possibly why the 8 and 16 is really not matching that much. It's really just a factor of what you're going to take on the road with you in terms of documents or that kind of thing. Right?
But that just makes it, because I know one of the big things is Spotify, and it's all my offline Spotify stuff that I have, because after you don't want to stream because
it's so expensive.
On ASL, it's going to stutter every now and again.
Yes.
So what I've actually started to do, and the reason this makes sense is I've got a very, very high cap data bundle inside of my Wi-Fi that lives inside my car and is plugged into the cigarette lighter attachment. So when I switch my car on, it switches itself. It doesn't have a battery in it. It switches itself on and connects to the nearest cell, and there I've got HSPA. It's amazing how far you can drive and just stream content quite happily. But I've been using that with SimFi on my iPhone, and it works fantastically well.
No, I can imagine that'd be awesome. Very cool.
That uncapped thing has to come, and then possibly it'll start making sense.
Yeah. So the local news for this is that LG is telling us that they've gone to operators to try and get the device ranged, which is the terminology they use in the industry, of the operator taking the device, testing it, and eventually putting it in their deal book.
Package, indeed.
And so the operators have said they're not interested in Nexi, because they don't sell well. The sell-through rates on them are poor. And so,
how many have they actually sold?
Okay, yeah, that number we haven't heard yet.
No, but I'm saying which ones have been available?
Exactly.
So the Galaxy Nexus has been available on Vodacom.
The Nexus S was brought in by Vodacom. The Galaxy Nexus was brought in
by Samsung.
By Samsung, or was it through Vodacom as well?
No, Samsung.
And then
it was available. It was definitely available through Vodacom.
It was available on contract, but you could buy it
advertised as a deal, but it was definitely available. In
Galaxy Nexus is available on Celsius as well, so it is through Samsung.
It was eventually, and you could buy it cash from Samsung.
We also don't get the Google Galaxy Nexus. We get the Samsung Galaxy Nexus.
Yeah, with a Samsung version of the ROM, South African version of the Galaxy Nexus ROM. So your updates actually has to go through them. So we lagged a bit behind.
So the review models we got must have, because mine's an absolutely pure vanilla.
Yeah, absolutely. The ones that we got,
Android,
this was before the actual South African launch.
Okay.
They are normal YAQ Galaxy Nexus, Google Galaxy Nexus devices.
I would argue that the operators are smoking their socks, because for me, the ultimate Android device is a Nexus device.
Yes.
For one reason and one reason alone, all right? When Ice Cream Sandwich shipped, I picked up my phone and I went, oh, look, there's an update. Yeah. And I pressed a button, and guess what? 15, 20 minutes later, I had ICS. The same thing happened with, Jelly Bean.
Yeah.
And there I've got a Motorola Razr, which, ironically enough, is owned by Google now, right? Okay, that only recently went to ICS. I'm like, congratulations, Google. You're only 2 generations behind your own operating system right now.
Yeah.
But
so the issue there, and this is where the discussion gets interesting and very speculative, because Google, part of the reason for no LTE support in the Nexus 4 is they don't want to have to submit to operator control in anything. And apparently, in order to get onto LTE networks in the States, at least, you have to partner with those networks to get the relevant settings and stuff,
for sure.
Sorted out. So Google doesn't like operator interference, and so
at least not with the Nexus.
And with the Nexus,
that's where they have the control. So they can't really say what other manufacturers do.
So the operators are not going to bring in a Nexus, I think. The operators are not going to bring in a Nexus that Google doesn't submit the software for testing for. So unless Google submits the software for testing, our operators are just not going to like it, before pushing out the update. That's also purely speculative. No one is willing to confirm this, obviously. My other challenge is the Nexus devices in South Africa have been horribly overpriced.
The Galaxy Nexus is a wonderful example of this, where the price got dropped to $350 6 months ago or something on the Google Store, on the Play Store, and you could order it from them directly, get it shipped. Wonderful. In South Africa, you were still paying 6,000 Rand for it.
So, I can go, okay, cool, we actually pay UK, EU pricing in South Africa, right? So 4,000 Rand, no. 5,000 Rand, no. We're still paying 6,500 Rand for the Galaxy Nexus. It's no wonder they don't sell. They're not priced at the point where they're supposed to be priced at.
And even the contract options didn't go down. When Samsung launched the S3 or maybe even the Note 2, the contract options are still priced within 20 Rand of those top tier devices. And then the Galaxy Nexus isn't competing with those ones anymore.
And interesting, internationally, we saw LG getting hauled over the coals for trying to sell the Nexus 4 at higher prices in countries that weren't getting it direct from Google. I don't know if you saw that story. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
So
South Africa is just a case of cry me a river, build a bridge, and get over it. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, NY box, here I come.
My way or the highway. Possibly one of the reasons those devices are also priced a lot higher is because of volumes. The prices only come down in large consignments. So I mean, it's really something that I think not the operators, but the vendors should be doing more about. They should be driving it. It is. I would think as Samsung, vendors, it would be
as a vendor. What can you do against the operator? You can't upset them.
Someone as small as LG can do nothing. I'm willing to wager.
Samsung on the other hand can do some amazing stuff. And you know what? I would argue if I was Samsung, I would really want my Nexus devices in a region because it is the ultimate endorsement of your abilities as a vendor. That the custodian of the Android ecosystem has gone, we are prepared to say this is a fantastic reference design. Anyway.
Yeah.
It is that, but I know Samsung, I would be more happy with the S3, which is all their branding
the
on
Note. Have you guys seen the marketing backing on the Note?
There's software on it that continually pushes more of their software.
But sorry, it's
to me, it's
one
irritating.
One of the things I hate about Android is the fact that everybody's trying to make it their own. I'm like, thank you very much. Google has done a fantastic job with RCS and Jelly Bean. Please can I just, or at least give me the option on installation. Do you want all of this other craft or do you want a vanilla Android experience? Yes, please, I'll take it later.
I have a point to that.
I prefer a vanilla experience every day of the week. The one thing that I sometimes do enjoy with the carrier skins is they start adding things that you can't find in stock Android. It's not there, so you're going to have to download some app that might work okay, but the OEM is just doing it better.
Swap is such a fantastic example of that. One of the biggest
SwiftKey
differentiators.
Is a wonderful example for me.
Even Facebook integration at some stage.
Anything that is not a stock Android device, I put SwiftKey on that thing as fast as I can.
Absolutely.
As fast as I can because their keyboard's generally.
So another point on this that I just wanted to make before moving on to the next piece of hardware we have to talk about.
I've got one more thing. If we're going to speak about more Android hardware,
we're talking about the Nexus 10 after this, and that's that the one vendor, and I'm calling them that in inverted commas, doing a great job with Android skinning and making it their own is ironically the one that broke away from Google completely, and that's Amazon. So I got a chance to play with the Amazon Kindle Fire briefly the other day, and you cannot actually tell that it's Android, and that's not a bad thing.
Absolutely.
They've truly made it their own. And obviously they can because they've got their whole ecosystem behind it. Books, music, movies, apps, the whole nine yards. They've essentially replaced the whole Google ecosystem with their own on Google's own operating system.
And they've done a great job with it. Because it doesn't work.
Yeah, because the only thing you'll get then is books.
Yeah, well, licensing, and even then, licensing is a tricky beast. I do hope that they do that one day.
Is there no way
Amazon comes to South Africa is the day Takealot and Kalahari and those guys nip because
Absolutely.
Amazon's just
I must say, Takealot hasn't since their changeover hasn't been as good as it used to be. Anyway,
yes, Nexus 10 quickly. Sir.
Okay, this one is fairly quick. Dual-core ARM Cortex-A15 CPU. I'm not sure where it's clocked though. 2 gigs of RAM and a quad-core Mali T604 GPU. Now, fantastic design on it. They've used an injected molded plastic for the back, it's pretty, and apparently it feels really good in your hands. So The Verge got an exclusive on the launch day with an exclusive. They went to Google to go do some video shooting. It wasn't supposed to be an exclusive; it just turned into one. Why am I apologizing for them? And
bastards.
They spoke to Matthias Duarte, and one of the things they actually said to him is, okay, you're making a big deal out of plastic. Usually manufacturers try and hide the fact that their device is made of plastic. And his response was, but this is a beautiful piece of plastic that is integral to the actual weight and the feel of the product.
I've just fired up my spreadsheet. It's a 1.7 gigahertz dual core.
1.7 gigahertz dual core.
1.21 gigawatts.
That's one of the new Exynos 5 system on chips.
I've got chipset is listed as unknown at the time. It might be it's probably Exynos.
The reason they went for that chipset is it's the only one they could find that can push the amount of pixels on that screen, which is, what was it, 2560 by 1600.
That's pretty hot.
This is like the hot Nexus device. I think
for anyone who cares about DPI, which is a horrible metric,
all our big PC screens do.
Yes, I think the cinema display competes in that.
One unfortunate reality of that resolution is that the phone apps you install on it are still going to look pretty crap. They're just going to look. Actually, they're going to look pretty crap. Sorry, there's no coming back from that.
For anyone who cares about PPI, that's 300 pixels per inch.
That's mad.
That's
absolutely mad.
I want to move us along from this.
I just want to jump in with one thing. I think it's absolutely fantastic and interesting and really, really telling that Google is now starting to support multiple vendor strategies. I think that is cool. The fact that there's ASUS in there, that LG's in there, and that Samsung's in there, I think that's pretty damn cool.
They've always swapped around with the vendors for the Nexus
but they've
program.
chosen like one or another or whatever the case
is. It was always just phones. Now they have 3 products. And I agree, it's really cool to see
the one to watch for
vendors.
me is definitely ASUS, though. What a mover and shaker in the past 4 years. They've come out of like nowhere with a triple EPC to really start doing some fantastic stuff in this space. Their hardware is good.
Yeah.
The support's good.
I'm really excited about
fantastic.
the potential of the pad phone, and so I'm waiting for the next iteration of that to see if that turns into something massive.
The pad phone 2 looks so cool.
Except it doesn't dock into a keyboard. But that we discussed, and I do want to just one piece of news in this, is that ASUS reports it's selling nearly 1 million Nexus 7s per month, and that number is climbing.
Did you see the fact that they've offered a cashback offer? Did you see that?
Yeah, in the US and the UK. I think in the US it was a cashback from Google. In the UK it was a cashback from
ASUS. And we're
on
waiting for
what issue?
On the Nexus 7.
On the Nexus 7.
When
because,
they dropped the prices for the 8 gig and the 16 and when they introduced the 32
So we're busy
gig.
waiting from, we're busy waiting on news from ASUS in terms of whether it's going to be supported locally.
We're still waiting for a price drop here, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
So the price drop's been announced internationally, and they will honour in multiple markets. There's no clarity whether South Africa is one of those markets. We actually covered it, I think, on Monday on DailyFive.
Yeah.
Now ASUS, at least from an attitude perspective, when we spoke to them, it sounded to us like they were just trying to hash out the details and that it will come, but obviously they can't say much on the record at this stage. So it feels like we're going to see the price drop, and that actually gives quite a feel-good atmosphere to around how ASUS and Google's handling the South African market and the smaller markets. I think it's right.
You mentioned DailyFive, and this also ties in nicely with our very mobile-centric discussion today. Brett, you've launched this thing called DailyFive.
Yep.
It looks pretty sweet. Tell the guys in the listening to us and in the IRC who might not have come across it, what are you doing?
Okay, so essentially we've been running a number of publications in print and online for a really, really long time.
You being Hypertext Media.
Hypertext Media, yeah. And we had all of this daily news and stuff that we were mining on a daily basis that we just didn't have an outlet for. We tried to do it with a website, and that didn't work. So what we thought was, let's just build a place that people can go to get the 5 most relevant stories that are going on in the tech world every single day. So as tech journalists, we take for granted the fact that we hit The Verge, we hit Engadget, we hit Gizmodo, we hit GigaOM, and the list goes on and on and on every single day as a matter of course to figure out what's happening in the international market. Then what we do is we distill stuff down, and we use that a lot of the time as fuel for leads and stuff like that in the stuff we read. But we can't expect readers to do that and then at the same time support local news sites. So the idea was very, very simple. Human aggregation. All right, we've got a couple of geeks in the office. We tried it as an experiment. We'll go out onto the web every single day. We'll find a handful of stories that are of local relevance. That's the important thing. They've got to have a local spin somehow, a product that's coming to South Africa, whatever the case is. Trim it down into a short 150 word snapshot view with a link out to The Verge or Gizmodo or whatever the case is, and push those through mobile apps every single day. So the only piece of content we do originate is we have a thing called the DailyFive, which is just a list of 5 random, arbitrary, interesting things. So we did something on Minecraft today, which was kind of cool. We've done geek fashion. We've done 5 ways to pimp your MacBook. We've done 5 cloud storage alternatives. We don't go into a lot of depth, but it's just kind of nice, whimsical, fun, entertainment-y type stuff for people that are interested in geekery and tech.
So take us through the apps. Which platforms are you on?
So ironically enough, we started out building for Android, and halfway through that process, the Windows 8 thing came along. So we started building for Windows 8. We got the Windows 8 version out a week before the Android version came out, which was quite interesting. And we were sitting on this APK for like actually a really, really long time testing it. But it went to Windows 8 first. One of 3 applications in the whole of Middle East and Africa to make it into that initial push that Microsoft made with the developer preview of
Did that
Grenade.
work out well for you?
It did. We picked up a lot of downloads in a very, very short space of time. But what I can tell you is it's really, really interesting. And this is something that we learned in terms of future generations of Windows. Everybody who's going to download it and use it is going to do so in the first week. We saw this gigantic spike in the first week and an immediate tail off. And then we were 1 or 2 downloads like a week from that point forward. So everybody that was going to use an intro version of Windows 8 had gotten it, had installed it, had looked through the App Store, chosen the apps they wanted, and they were done. Granted, at that stage, there were like 128 apps in the world. So, there wasn't a massive variety to choose from. So that worked out really, really well for us. And we learned a lot of things about how Microsoft vets applications. And strange enough, how to a certain extent immature their ecosystem around running a curated store is. So that worked out well for us. We launched to the Samsung store for Android, and we launched to the
How
Android
did you get into
marketplace.
that?
The Samsung store?
Because
The Windows 8?
The Samsung store. So I
Samsung
posted stuff to
store?
this and says, "Oh, we're reviewing your app. We'll let you know when." That was the last I heard.
We signed up for an account. We uploaded our APK. The biggest problem with the Samsung app, and this probably bleeds into the topic around multiple platform development, right, is the fact that you've got to fill out 16 different applications for exactly the same APK, depending on what form factor and platform and version of Android of Samsung device you're going to list it for. So the weird thing, it's exactly the same form. It doesn't cut and paste. So you've got to sit and page through these 4 or 5 pages of stuff and upload screenshots all over again for 16 different platforms. All right? But we went through that process. It took us a whole bunch of hours to get it done. And then we went into approval a couple of days later. We were, in the store. Very, very simple. When I talk about iOS, I'll blow your mind about that too. So then we listed in the Samsung store. We had some form of exclusivity with them for the first couple of months. That fell to pieces, which means we put it into the Android marketplace. I can tell you right now that we have had 100 times more, literally 100 times more downloads through the Samsung store than what we had through Google Play.
Interesting.
To date. Right? It has just been on steroids. It's our biggest platform is the Samsung marketplace. They do a fantastic job of featuring new applications. Their search engine's fantastic. I think it's also a symptom of the fact that they have a much smaller base of apps, and they're actually quite stringent in terms of what they pass. So Google, by contrast, the most important thing for getting an app into the Google Android Play Store is have you paid your $99 or whatever it costs to sign up for or $25? Yeah. So I mean, it was actually really, really stupid. It was like that was the longest part of the process. Then we got this little email to say, okay, we've accepted your $25 now. Upload your app. We uploaded the app, and within minutes it was in their store. Yeah. They didn't even look at it, man. It could have been a piece of malware. That's when alarm bells went off.
They do scanning. A lot of that is automated. So they have their server-side scanning. They now have client-side scanning in the latest in Jelly Bean as well.
It was just absolutely mind-blowing that they really didn't care. It was about taking the $25 of us, really.
But it's $25 once off as well.
Absolutely, it is.
It's not $99 a year like Microsoft and
that's,
Apple.
Yeah,
irritating
the $25 is more like a deterrent for spammers.
Absolutely,
because if you do get kicked, then now you have to pay the $25 again.
Well, the interesting thing in terms of that is it's virtually impossible to get any traction in that sea of applications because there's not a South African portfolio of applications that separates you out.
There is now. So you're not allowed to steal my story, but there are there are a group of guys trying to do like a South African thing around it. I'm also just joking. You're more than welcome to share the story.
No, absolutely. It's it's
it's listed in the Play Market. It's called Spaza Shop.
Okay.
And so I guess you can contact them and see if you can get your app featured in there. And hopefully if we can get Spaza Shop together as South African media some traction, then that'll be a place where guys can see South African content.
We've spoken to the local Google guys.
I looked at that quickly because I saw the emails going through. I saw how many people have actually installed it.
Yes.
It was 16.
Yeah. So that's why. I mean, as a South African media, we can punt it hard and see if we can get it some traction.
The sad thing is, I've lobbied Google in South Africa. I've spoken to them a couple of times, and I've said to them, guys, really, our application's good. I'll show you. I haven't heard one piece of negative feedback. The only negative review we've had for our application is somebody saying they switched devices, right? And it now marks up a little bit differently on the device, but it's absolutely functionally perfect. All right, it works on every single Android device we've played with. It's quick, it's snappy, it's stable, it's all of those things you want, and they will not do anything about putting us on any form of featured list, any form of carousel. And it's a tragedy, because you're looking at companies that are sitting in Silicon Valley with a lot more VC than what South African companies are sitting with. They can spend a lot more on AdWords, they can spend a lot more on development, they can do a lot of social media PR, and good applications in South Africa. I've seen a handful of really, really stunning apps in South Africa that are getting no airtime because it's curated out of somebody sitting in Mountain View. It's not cool, right? They really should have somebody sitting local and looking at local apps and saying, hey, this is relevant because it says stuff in rands.
Stuff
speaks about soccer and
stuff
not football.
Like Nokia does.
Indeed.
Nokia does that,
indeed.
Right?
So that was Android. Our play numbers picked up, a little bit, but still, Samsung has been absolutely fantastic.
Are you on BlackBerry and iOS as well?
So we're on iOS at the moment. So iOS is an interesting story. We submitted it for approval, all right, having tested it on iOS 6 also, because we had iOS 6. But when we submitted it, it was at the switch over from iOS 5 to iOS 6, and the option didn't exist to explicitly list the fact that it worked for 6. You could only list that it worked for 5. So you put it into submission, and then you sit and you wait 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 for somebody to pick your app up and test it, right? And this is 10 days before they do that at a bare minimum, right? When they picked it up and they tested it, they bounced it on account of the fact that it didn't support 6. Because when we submitted it, there was no option for 6, but by the time they got around to looking at it, there was an option for 6. So it didn't explicitly support 6. They kicked it out. We resubmitted straight away. We waited 7 days. It took 35 minutes for our application to be vetted, approved, and put into the store, which was fantastic. I've put other apps in the iOS store. I've never seen it do that, ever. It's like 35 minutes, bam, it was live. And the traction's been fantastic. So if we track what we've done on iOS 6, and this is what I found quite interesting, if we track what we did on iOS 6 in the first week versus what we did with promotion in the Samsung store in the first week, iOS 6 was through the roof by comparison. We were getting 200-300 downloads a day. And then it just magically tailed off again. So we're in development with BlackBerry at the moment. We're doing a universal version for 5, 6, and 7 at the moment. Should be out by year end. Mainly because, and people go, why are you developing for BlackBerry? I go, okay, 42% of the South African smartphone space.
Hello.
I was going to say, I don't know why somebody would be asking why. That's it's not obvious when you
article that I read today that had the numbers for the millions of BlackBerry users on one network versus the hundreds of thousands on iOS and Android.
And people ask me what my business model is. It's simple. I get users, I serve them news, and while they're reading news, I push ads in their face, and the people that pay for those ads pay me lots of money, and then we get rich. Well, that's at least the idea. We're not rich yet. We're breaking even.
It's a question mark? Can you sort that?
No, we know what's happening. We just need a lot more of that to be happening.
That's really impressive.
Yeah, so we bootstrapped it, which is also an interesting story, is we are net cash positive. We didn't inject a cent into it, or everything we've injected into it, the tens and 20,000s that we put in to start this process, we've gotten back, which is nice. So it's tracking really, really well. We're going to start with 10 next year. I still have my reservations about 10. I think it's a fantastic OS. I just think BlackBerry's a little bit late to the party.
Yeah.
And I think that, we're actually discussing it last night. A couple of mates around at my house. even though it's fantastic and even though the products look really, really good, the problem is everybody that currently owns a BlackBerry that would logically be the candidate to get BlackBerry 10 next year has already made the mental shift right now. I'm either getting an iPhone or I'm getting an Android device. They will not go for another BlackBerry because of what has happened in the past 2 years. And it's sad because I think it's a fantastic device. Really, and it's a great OS.
We'll see. The Mixer is the exception to the rule. And we'll see what BlackBerry does in its markets where it still is strong. Maybe it can bootstrap back into international relevance, I should say, because so much of our opinion of technology and technology companies is shaped by the US media. They're the most prolific, they're the most visited, they're the most tweeted, all that stuff. And that's, in a way, that's really unfortunate because if you look at the South African market, it tells a very different story.
If you look at the African market, if you look at the Chinese market, if you look at the Indian market, it's like it's mad.
Yes.
All right, they are flying in emerging regions worldwide, and they're tanking in more mature regions, which is why you've got to question their strategy. Why would you possibly want to get back and get relevant in the markets where you're lagging right now, where what you could be doing is spending a lot more marketing dollars in just taking everybody else out at the kneecaps in those emerging markets?
And that is an interesting strategy.
I think part of the worry is if they don't start making that market back, because they're now starting to lose money because they're losing those markets. On one thing, that money is what helps fund it for the third ones. Also, the cheap Androids are on their way. They'll get there eventually.
Yeah,
they're on their way. So you've got competition coming up. So you want to try, push everybody out everywhere. But
so it is an interesting issue because BlackBerry has said that they're going to launch the high end first and they're going to slowly phase in the low end stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out for them. It all depends on how quickly this phased approach is.
Yes. So I'll be honest with you, if I have to dig in my gut and see, and I like them. I like what they're doing. Fantastic product, good OS. I think they're done. It's too late. Look at how fantastic HP's WebOS was. Look at how awesome those devices were. I remember playing with the early versions of that at Mobile World and being absolutely blown away. And the year before that, playing with the Palm stuff and how cool the Pebble was and all of that really, really rad stuff. All right? And it went absolutely nowhere because people's attentions were being occupied by other stuff. It's like
they also had a
that
bad
boat has
run.
sailed,
They had a bad run with carriers and partnerships.
Yeah.
So a lot of it was due to those partnerships. They had a big partnership with Verizon, as I recall.
Yeah.
And Verizon pulled out at the last second.
Sure.
And now they're stuck with a bunch of devices they can't use anywhere else. And that's when they made a partnership with Sprint, which is not one of the biggest players in the US.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was all downhill.
They don't
from
have
there.
the best network.
I think it would have been a lot better had the partnership with Verizon not gone south.
Jan will probably agree with me on this as well. It's actually a theory that a couple of people are kind of banding around the industry right now. Is one of the wild cards. It's also going to be a huge mountain for BlackBerry to climb is the fact that BIS does not make sense in the context of BlackBerry 10. It just doesn't in any way, mean, or form because you're trying to compete with devices that offer a very, very rich internet and media experience of extremely fast networks. Compression doesn't play nicely in that space. It just absolutely doesn't. All right. In order for them to be relevant, they've got to push video, they've got to push audio, they've got to push all of these rich services. There's no way you're going to get that into a $59 all-you-can-eat internet package. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting, and hopefully we'll see some more speculative articles about that in the future.
No BIS in 2030.
And that's their value proposition for emerging markets.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we've got a BlackBerry topic coming up, but they cannot cull BIS and expect to retain their market share in places like South Africa.
Absolutely.
Since you're talking about that, anyone bring the 8 Google free email thing, which actually does
we'll talk. Maybe we'll talk about that now. But first, we've got a BlackBerry topic, which is that BBM is offering free voice calls over Wi-Fi. So BBM is BlackBerry's what they like to call their social networking service, but it's an IM. Really.
It's like WhatsApp for BlackBerry.
No, WhatsApp is like BBM for everybody else.
Other way around.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Anyway, you're going to get an angry email Krista tomorrow.
Oh, no, come on. She knows I'm joking.
But yeah, this looks pretty cool. However,
but what's the advantage of this over Skype?
No, I was about to say, so
is
it's a
there
live
Skype on
Skype, but
BlackBerry?
inside
Your
BBM.
Skype is going to get hacked.
Oh, yes. Did you see the security thing about
Yes,
Skype today?
yes.
Yeah, your Skype is going to get hacked from just your email address.
And your username.
And all your logs stolen. That's what.
Yes.
Okay, he's telling me a BBM will never get hacked.
If it gets hacked, BlackBerry's in a world of hurt.
No, look,
Part of their whole value
BBM's not-
proposition.
BBM has never been hacked. It's gone down, but it's never been hacked.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's
Not to
pretty
say that
secure.
there's much more secure out there. I mean, we are lagging or beating on Skype now, but I mean, there have been WhatsApp security issues out the yin yang. But I mean, there are other options. Let's get real. There's Skype. There's Google Voice, along with
Viber.
Viber. There's FaceTime. So I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
and so this is apparently just BBM to BBM. Now, the other interesting thing here is this is the
Oh, so you
first
can phone
time.
the three. Sorry, this is so hard. But you can phone the three other people you know with BlackBerry.
Sorry,
It's also just over Wi-Fi, like FaceTime initially.
my question with this. Okay, so do both of you have to be on Wi-Fi to be able to use this?
Yes.
So
I
how do you
assume
know
so.
if the other person's on Wi-Fi that you can phone them over this?
That's going to be interesting. BBM has been really good about status stuff. So it's like it'll tell you, hey, this message has been delivered. Hey, this message has been read. So I hope they get the Wi-Fi status thing right as well. But that said, what I do want to just point out before swiftly moving on to the next topic,
Before I dish more hate on the BlackBerry.
you know, this is the first time I've seen BlackBerry make an out-and-out move, that's against the business model of their carrier partners. BlackBerry, every press release that you ever read from them talks about their carrier partners and how they love their carrier partners and all that stuff. VoIP is not something that carrier partners particularly enjoy,
So,
especially in South Africa where voice is still a very lucrative business.
so rewind the topics 2 minutes. You're all smart guys. What does that tell you about the future of BIS and BBM? Right? They know it's gone. They know it's gone. You know what?
That the operators won't let it back, essentially.
No, we've spoken to operators. Operators far prefer selling Android devices and iPhones right now because
And
they
selling
make
it to random
yes,
meg,
they make
yeah.
a lot more money on data on those, right? Take a look at the economies. It's $59, all right? So $59, the operator's got to make some money out of that, all right? Profit, because they're also paying some money away on data, right?
And they're also paying a licensing fee.
Then they've got to, and then BlackBerry makes a small little licensing fee, but it's capped at that level, all right?
Yes.
Whereas I blow 500 meg to a gig's worth of data consistently every single month on 3G alone on one phone.
Yes.
Okay, where are they making more money, right? BlackBerry, RIM knows that the BIS service is on its way out because operators are not
BIS
making
might
money
still
off
be
it.
around, but the operators definitely want usage-based billing on it.
Yeah, there's going
So
to be
BIS as like a compression service and blah, blah, blah. They might keep
absolutely,
around.
but there's not going to be the $59 all
Yeah.
you can eat.
I mean,
no one's making money
elsewhere in the
there.
world, by the way, there is no all-you-can-eat model on BIS. It's only in South Africa.
Yes, well, and in some African countries also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it really is emerging markets that have that kind of stuff. In fact, BlackBerry's a stupid expensive solution to have in the US. It's mad. Like $70 or something like that a month subscription. It's really not worth it. No, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Take a look at some of the numbers.
So let's talk about competition in this space, as Tim alluded to earlier, which is that ATA and Google announced this week, it was like the big news of the week so far, big news of the day, of yesterday. There we
Of
go.
yesterday, yeah.
Yesterday's big news. To call it the week's big news, I think is a little optimistic. But at least yesterday's big news is that there are now a bunch of free Google services on ATA. All you do is you register a SIM, pop it in to a mobile device, not tablets. Apparently, you get error messages on tablets, but on a cell phone or smartphone. And you can hit Google for free. You can hit Gmail for free. And you can hit Google Plus for free. No attachments on mail, important proviso. And
No photos uploaded into Google Plus.
no, I
No
think
photos are included?
Photos
Can
and
you
stuff.
push
yeah.
photos
So
into
your
Google
shares and
Plus?
stuff on Google Plus are included. It's just mail that
nice.
they
Google Plus
they're strict
users can
about.
share photos and messages.
Now, you see, they say share photos and messages. Can they upload photos?
Yes,
over that.
we must test that.
Yes.
So
and what's very interesting to me, and I was discussing this with someone else earlier today, is Google Messenger, Google Plus Messenger, is that included in this? Because that's essentially kind of BBM-ish.
I would imagine, if you look at this, they're pretty much trying to limit it to text-based stuff. Because that's
Yeah.
a low end with compression. You can shrink it down.
And also,
Very focused on feature phones.
and some
Absolutely,
images exactly
yeah.
feature phones. So, for example, you do a search on Google, then if you hit a search link, that's still also free.
Yeah.
So you can actually go to your search result for free as well. So a nice little workaround. I shouldn't be saying this because it's going to encourage people to come to our sites and bounce back to Google search instead of going deeper into the site. But
Claim the uniques, dude. It's more uniques than what you had yesterday. I'll take it.
But I don't want the bounce rate going up, man. Anyway, but yeah, you do a search.
All about what you disclose. Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks.
Indeed.
Luckily, advertising asked for
Marketing.
bounce rate. So if you can search, go to the first thing, then you can go back to Google. And search again, and go to that hit for free.
So
the
what
second
you
you
do
go
is-
to a link on the site that you're visiting,
That's
it'll
not
prompt you and say, "Hey, you're about to spend
And
money."
my other question is, to do this, they would actually have to be sending you to a cache page. Because they need
Perhaps.
to track the link going somewhere else.
Yes.
So
it's
you
probably
might not
some
even
sort of-
get the hit.
Yeah, it might be some sort of, or at least all the hits will uniques. It'll still look like a page view, but it might be all coming from the same ATA proxy. Yeah.
So from what I understand is that it's going through an APN that can snoop exactly what the traffic is, and they know exactly what you're doing. They're actually tracking every single movement, absolutely. But as far as I understand, there is a separate APN which zero rates that. And then the moment you hit that second link or a second page on from that, it then starts billing you. So so the next question obviously would be, what else can they track? And the answer to that question is they can track pretty much anything depending on what protocol it is. They know when you're
would say
using WhatsApp. They know how much you're
Everything they're
spending on
currently
WhatsApp.
tracking right now.
Absolutely. You sign that little
Well,
thing when you check that
they
little
know-
box to tell them what they can do. Yeah.
They know where you are. Because they see got your location from the cell towers.
Excuse me, I need to go make some tinfoil hats.
No, but they do.
I'll be right
it's,
back.
it's like if you're going to worry about tracking and stuff,
Absolutely.
it's done.
Don't be on the internet.
Yes, indeed,
it's too
yes.
late.
Check that do not track box and watch how people ignore you.
Yeah.
No, really.
One,
It's
one other question.
crazy.
This free offering, is this only on ATA's coverage, or does it stretch to their roaming
I
agreements
think
as
it's
well?
it's on the ATA network in general. It would make
So
sense
it's
for
the
that.
whole, even their roaming agreement.
Yeah.
I would imagine you'd have to get pushed through a specific proxy. So as long as you can get into that, you're
Yeah, I would assume that what they would do is they would send an over-the-air APN configuration.
As I understand it,
thing.
you have to
Yeah,
configure your.
absolutely.
It's a funky configuration for the APN.
Really?
Absolutely,
No,
yeah.
you just go to. So you have to go through a specific site. I think that's where the trick is. You have to go to ada.com/free zone, and everything is through there. So unless you hit it through that particular portal. So I think through that portal they do everything. So I don't think you need a specific APN or anything fancy. So on to cool things, which is Steam for Linux beta access was doled out, and I didn't get any. It's
About
totally
freaking
lame.
time.
Yeah.
Not about
Yeah,
freaking time that you didn't get any. About freaking time it was there.
Yeah, exactly.
In
Waiting for
particular,
so long.
this was for developers at the Ubuntu Developer Summit.
Yep.
And at that same summit, they said that beta access will be generally available before the end of the year.
Cool.
I think there has been a bit more open access. There was a sign-up. There
Yes.
was a beta access sign-up, and those have been dished out. And obviously, there have been some people going around and trying to figure out how to get it working, even though they didn't get the access, and they've been somewhat successful. I still have to test it out.
Yeah, no. Well, as soon as we get access, we'll let you know how it is. If anybody in IRC has had access and
Wants to share.
yeah, either wants to share, or wants to come on the show and tell us what they've experienced, you're welcome to do that.
How it's been.
And how
The
it's been and stuff?
performances,
Yeah, what games have you tried, and
So-
how's it performing?
So to that point, as a avid Mac user, I was really excited when Steam came to Mac. But the reality was, again, it was only for games that natively ran or were
Yeah.
like built as
And
hybrids
even then-
for Mac.
And
right?
even then, like I would buy games through the Humble Indie Bundle, or the Humble Android Bundle, or whatever Humble Bundle
Yeah.
is on sale, that particular week.
And download the Mac version.
and I would get better Mac support there than I do on Steam. So there would be games available that have Mac support, but that aren't available on Steam for some reason, and that kind of grates my cheese because I've paid for the game on Steam, and now I know there's a Mac port for it, but I don't get it.
It was one of the problems I had with the Orange Box because I activated my Orange Box through Steam for PC way back when. All of those games are available for Mac, and they run very nicely on Mac. So they've now subsequently added,
Yes.
they've retrospectively gone back and added little bits and pieces to it. So if there's a Mac version, you can download it on Mac. But the question would be, does the same apply to Linux, because you can get Linux rocking really, really hard with things like Sedega and all of the emulators and run or not emulators for that matter, and run
or just
and run Windows games really, really nicely on.
Some, yeah, especially WoW, bigger ones. WoW,
the ones that
Guild
put a lot
Wars.
of effort to just tune in and get all the bugs sorted out.
Yes,
They incredibly well.
Yeah,
but is it a case of that, or are we talking about games that have been natively designed to also work on Linux natively?
Yeah. For example, it was interesting to see that effectively Guild Wars' Linux support was a premium environment container. I don't remember the exact name of the environment now. I lied. It wasn't their Linux support. It was their Mac support. Was effectively a type of wine emulation for...
Sorry, who is this?
Guild Wars 2.
Oh, yes, indeed. So, and there's, I've had a fair amount of success running emulators on Mac to run Windows games. They're not quite as good as what you'd expect and not nearly as good as what you can get done with Linux. But it'll be interesting to look into how they're planning to tackle that, because... Last time I checked, there's a number of high-level titles, but really not the entire portfolio that's available natively for Linux. In fact, Fried Roadkill saying that about 16 of his games have Linux clients, apparently.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I'd assume he has a lot more than 16 games.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's in a chat room and he knows how to IRC, so there you go.
All right, I'm going to have to interrupt us there because we're running out of time. So going to the kicker.
Yes.
Google gets an alligator.
What
on earth is this?
Okay, it is roundabout, right? Just something fun to end the show with. I dig that image. I'd say it's for something. With Google, they've got all these cooling ponds and stuff with these massive server farms that they've got. And what they found is, large bodies of stagnant water, what happens? Algae grows in. Okay, so what they're doing is fish. Let's add some fish in. Okay. Now, unfortunately, what happens
Google
with that is
ecosystem.
you now have a lower class food chain element and a higher class food chain element enters. So an alligator rocked up. So they had an alligator in their cooling pond. They've chatted to the wildlife guys and they said, it's cool, just leave it. I don't know, it's like 4 feet, 6 feet at the moment, but once it reaches 10 feet, they'll then come in and remove it. But what they say is where they are, this is just going to keep on happening. So part of their cooling system is an alligator to take care of the fish that eats the algae.
Yes, but the fish also like poop, which the algae eats, so... It's the circle of life.
To a point, but I think what it does is stops the algae going nuts. So you should see in our ponds where the algae really goes and basically takes over the whole pond.
Okay.
I think this is just
add
to stop.
more fish. When have plenty algae, add more fish.
Well, I think fish naturally start, there's more food, more fish, until a happy equilibrium
until you reach a balance
certain
point.
symbiosis emerges.
And then you add the alligator. But cool, I just dig it. It's just, there's random parts of nature where
Congratulations, you have unlocked the alligator badge.
Yes.
It gives you meaning to the Google ecosystem.
So with that, Brettski, thank you very much for joining us on our show.
You.
Where can people find you?
So they can find me on Twitter @Brettski. It's probably the easiest place to follow all my ramblings, considering the fact that I push everything via there. But we don't actually have a web presence for much else at the moment. We're busy revamping all of that. But Connect Magazine,
they can download DailyFive.
DailyFive.tv. Please download it. And please do me a favor, if you do download it, platform of choice, iOS, Android, Windows 8, tell us what you think about it. We're trying something new and innovative with it, and we really need to know whether it's working. So
Windows Phone 8 coming?
Windows Phone 8 will be coming. The SDK was only released a couple of weeks ago, so we're still getting to grips with that. And it's not as good as what we thought it was going to be.
To switch from Windows 8 to Windows Phone 8?
Absolutely.
They made it sound like it was going to be a cakewalk.
30 to 40% rewrite of code in order to get it working. It's quite dramatic.
That's harsh.
All of the logic stays the same in terms of how things actually work, and our API.
But you've got to redo all the UI code, don't you?
All of the UI and the UX. There's no charms interface, which is a huge problem. The sharing's a little bit different. So, and if you're looking at an application like ours that intrinsically in its DNA is designed to share content, it does present a whole bunch of challenges. Is on the radar scope, should be out first month or two of next year. And if you're on a BlackBerry, still hanging on by a thread, we should have a version out for you by the end of the year.
Cool. Tim Hawk, thank you for joining us in show, my friend. Welcome back and all that. So where can people find you?
Twitter. I'll push.
Lies.
Great signal again. But yeah, at Tim Hawk, I'm on there very, very rarely. But the app's back on my phone again. So
glossing over Great Signal, I mean, that is where you've been doing, and it's a fairly social experience if you account sharing your location with the web server somewhere. Quick update, how's that going?
It's going well. We should have stats. You can also now filter by 3G, Edge, etc. now, and MTN. We should have stats. Hopefully by Wednesday next week, and that's personal stats and overall stats, and then hopefully just after that we'll start plotting your maps as well, and then and there should be a app update within 2 weeks.
Brilliant. Gerrit Vermeulen.
Hello.
Yes, thank you for joining us on the show. Where can people find you?
It's a pleasure as always. About.me/HawkieZA. You'll find all the wonderful links to the Google Plus and the Twitters, no Facebook. Yeah, all of it's over there.
Brilliant.
Cool.
I'm Jan Vermeulen. I spend most of my online writing energies at my broadband.co.za.
He is the staff writer.
I'm also on the Twitters at JanVZA and Google Plus, as we've just discussed occasionally. Jan Vermeulen, you just pop me in a circle and you won't see anything from me, but at least I know you're following me. So I'll share stuff with you when I share to limited circles.
So if you work at Google, totally follow him on Google Plus.
With that, thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget to catch our other shows. We've got Let's Talk Possibility on Mondays. We've got Let's Talk Afrikaans every other week.
Every fourth week.
Every month or so on Thursdays.
Yes.
Yeah. So tune in for that. If you're Afrikaans speaking, that's pretty rad. So with that, thank you for joining us. Catch the podcast on YouTube, and we'll see you again next week. And there's one last matter that we have to deal with at the request of a viewer, and that is we have to weigh in on our feelings on Facebook. So let's begin with you, Brett. Do you mind Facebook? Do you not mind Facebook? Do you use Facebook at all?
So people think that I use Facebook a lot, but I've set my Twitter to auto post to Facebook. The only time I go to Facebook is when somebody actively responds to something on Facebook. But
and then you get like a notification.
Yeah,
email.
like an email. I'm like, boo, hiss, delete, time sync. But it's interesting. I don't actually use Facebook.com as a website all that often, because the reality is there's this fantastic thing called an API. And the APIs allow me to do two things. A, have a very, very rich Facebook experience without ever having to actually go to Facebook.com. And B, ensure that in having that rich Facebook experience without going to Facebook.com, I deprive Facebook of advertising because I think they're evil. So, but I don't mind it. I don't really see that much of a use for it. It's like I don't want to look at kitten pics all day long, you know.
And yeah,
that's what Reddit is for.
Indeed, damn it.
Yeah. As a
find your own business model.
Google Plus as a similar type of service. Do you spend a lot of time on that?
Google Plus, it's interesting. I spent a lot of time posting a lot of content to it. The biggest problem is I think it's a fantastic way of organizing a social construct. I think that works really, really well. I just get the feeling that not enough people are there and not enough people are engaging, and that's what the problem is. So as a publisher and as a journalist, I'm sure you face exactly the same thing. It's a fantastic way of getting content out there. But what I find on Twitter is when I push interesting content out there, the same holds true for that content that ends up on Facebook. I get engagement back. I don't get engagement back on Google Plus, and that's what I think the problem is. You saw the whole joke. It's like social networks explained, and it kind of goes through Twitter, now eating a sandwich, Foursquare, I am here eating a sandwich, Instagram, here's a photo of the sandwich I'm having, etc., etc. Drills all the way down to Google Plus at the end, and it's like, Google Plus, I'm a Google employee. Literally that, because the reality is the only people.
My next comment.
The only people really using it to any extent.
And there's lots of them. 30,000 Google employees right there pushing it hard.
I'm going to disagree slightly with you. Google Plus does have a very decent photography community.
Absolutely,
and
in certain niches it works.
So I have a nice circle of just photographers of semi-pro, some of them pro. And I follow those guys, and they get a lot of engagement on whatever they're posting.
The same holds true for MySpace. MySpace is still fantastic for bands and people that are interested in the recording industry and that whole thing. It's about niches. my experience of Google Plus, to answer your question, is it's great, and I can put fantastic content out there, and I can filter in a really, really granular fashion who I want to follow and all of that kind of thing. I just find that nobody really engages. Everybody puts a lot of content onto it, and nobody actually chips in and comments or adds to it, and that for me is sad. That's why it doesn't work. It's a user problem, not a social technology problem, if that makes any sense.
I do want to go to, Gerrit chipped in, I wanted to ask him about Facebook, but Tim, you look like you've got a comment and you can tell us about Facebook.
Okay, I'll also start with Google Plus just because where my comment was.
Sure.
Originally, I found I was getting actually comments back, but oddly enough, purely in like a tech science area, so very niche. As time is going by, it's gone quieter and quieter.
Yeah,
quieter. You're the only person I generally see on Google Plus. And
Tim's pointing at me, by the way.
Yeah, that's Gerrit. Or anytime I interact with anybody from Google, they push it down my throat to the point I want to scream at them. It's like, do you want to get hold of me? No, like, don't talk to me. Get hold of me on Google Plus. It's like, why? Why are you?
What's wrong with email, friend?
Forcing me, like, I was at the Google Plus thing. Everything was like, you want to ask me a question? Like, you have to use Google Plus. Never mind, all the other things are better.
Absolutely,
and the other things you get responses back. There was a map thing. I posted my question at this person because that was the requirement. They didn't finish their talk quickly enough. I have had no response back from them, and all the responses back on the page were all spam.
Nice.
And that's it's starting to become my expression. Facebook, I was starting to get back involved in it. I then stopped. My life got busy. I stopped. And do you know what I realized?
You don't miss it.
I'm happier without it. It's really odd, just strange enough. By stepping away and not feeling you have to interact with these things, you actually suddenly realize it adds this weird stress in your life that suddenly just is not there. But I imagine with you guys, it's quite different. You have to interact with it. You've got people there, and being journalists, you have to do it.
I think partially the other thing that bothers me about Facebook is privacy issues and rights issues around content, which is why I'm also very, very selective about what I'll post. So the only thing that ever ends up there is stuff that I've pushed via Twitter. I very, very rarely push anything else there, because once you've posted it to Facebook, theoretically Facebook owns it and can use it for whatever they want, and that's not great.
Gerrit, your feelings on Facebook first.
Feelings on Facebook.
Since you've shared your feelings on Google Plus.
So it started off, I had a Facebook account. Then I stopped having a Facebook account. And then I went back because I needed to review a couple of devices, and for some strange reason they needed a Facebook account. And had it for a bit, and now I've gone back to not having a Facebook account for a couple of reasons. One, every time I logged into Facebook, I realized I didn't like logging into Facebook anymore. The things that people didn't really share anything meaningful. I also wasn't getting any kind of engagement, or it's a place where you have 100 friends and nobody says anything. Maybe I'm the only guy. So stopped having Facebook account and haven't looked back. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so I was going to say, this is you one comment there, you're the only guy. Now Cecilia uses it all the time. She keeps in contact with all her friends and ex-school friends.
I didn't want to mention that.
So I think, there is this thing about, male, female, and I think it's partially probably true here.
Huh. So I'm going to jump in with something that's really, really interesting here, is we have an unbelievably high engagement on Girl Guides, one of the sites that I run, that is focused at women who are interested in technology.
Like technology lifestyle from a female perspective,
yes,
right?
but not just... It's not for technology enthusiasts.
Yes.
It's really just looking
Lifestyle.
at technology in a very, very everyday fashion, reviewed from a variety of different women in completely different walks of life, anyone from students to high-powered execs to like mommy bloggers, etc. And our Facebook engagement for Girl Guides is through the roof. Really, it's absolutely huge. So, that bears that point out, to the point where we have a much higher engagement and really, really powerful following on Facebook that almost at one stage it actually dwarfed what we were getting on our website, which is very, very interesting.
So I'm going to weigh in last, and yes,
I'd like to finish.
Yes,
with Google Plus and Twitter, I see a lot more engagement. So I post something, and a lot of times I actually get people actually responding to things that I say. It doesn't just feel like I'm pushing things into a void. And with Google Plus, the interesting thing there is it's a lot of the times it's very asynchronous. I'd post something, and a week later, I'd start getting responses from some people.
Absolutely.
I've seen that as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, just quickly, the one thing that I think is missing from Google Plus, and they would probably make it a lot more valuable for me, is if I had the ability to auto-post to it when I post it to Twitter.
Yeah.
Twitter for me has become the central conduit through which I share. So if I take a photo on Instagram, it automatically goes through Twitter and by proxy Facebook, and shares really, really nicely that way. And they've gotten really clever about how they rope that meta in a cool way, so it presents really nicely as if you posted on Facebook. That's what's missing from Google Plus right now, because frankly, I just do not have the time to go and post in two places at the same time.
From a Google Plus perspective, one thing that is one of the things that does grate my cheese. Google's insistence of not making the same mistake as Twitter, or for that matter, Facebook, to open up the and I say mistake in inverted commas.
So damn badly because man, they're struggling so badly for users right now. I mean, geez, what are they going to do? I mean, they really need to get those numbers up.
But apparently they struggle to monetize, and that's the problem, because all the apps around them were monetizing fine, but Twitter was unable to actually monetize their own. Well, not unable, but struggled to monetize their own platform, and so now they're trying to retroactively consolidate everything. By limiting the way the API works, by buying up things like TweetDeck, anyway. But that said, so it does seem to me like this is Google actively saying we will not make the same mistake. But on the flip side, now they allow a few select people in, like Hootsuite, which is what we use at My Broadband. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. If you don't know, you know now.
Yeah.
You should be able to tell from the hourly links, and it's really cruddy because it doesn't share the thumbnail images through properly.
Absolutely.
And we can't manually post everything. And it feels like you're not using the platform properly because the article thumbnail isn't there. But it is there. I've made sure it's there so that when people click the +1 button, the article thumbnail shows automatically. And when you share, it shares beautifully. But, when you use something that's now, got this restricted API access, only a limited number of people can use it, it's shoddy. I mean, that's just poor form.
You speak to Google about Google Plus, and I was very, very privileged when I went to CES at the beginning of this year. We flew via San Francisco, and we got a morning with the folks from Google, and we met with one of the top dudes at Google Plus. And you listen to what they say about Google Plus, and then you look at their execution, and they're two very, very separate things. What they say about Google Plus is everybody's missing the fact that it creates a layer through which you can interact in a really, really rich way with all of Google's services. Okay, and that I buy. That is really, really cool because if it exploits the full value of the Google ecosystem, then it's starting to offer some real value to people, right? The reality is they're closing bits of it down and they're trying to make it this exclusive social network. So when social networks boomed, it was all about who was there, all right? Then very, very shortly after that, social networks became about exclusion and not about inclusion, from the perspective that it was about the quality of the audience. And now that's flipped around again. And inadvertently what they've created is a ghost town where people are posting a lot of content, all right? There's not a lot of interaction, all right? If I post to Twitter, it pushes through to Facebook, and Facebook gets to, my contacts on Facebook that might be different from my Twitter followers get to experience that content and interact with that content. In the same way as you can turn it around, certain people push content through Facebook and it ends up on Twitter. And it's exactly the same thing. The content needs to be out, indeed. Like I was saying,
put that in context.
If the antwoord is the answer, surely the question is WTF. But anyway, but the reality is I think they're actually doing themselves a disservice by closing this down and keeping it exclusive because people are not going to use it because it's not easy. And people are not going to use Google Plus independent. They're not going to choose to use Google Plus over the combination of Facebook and Twitter. Not a chance.
Tim, you wanted to weigh in on something?
Something just added something in RSC is that if your company uses Google Apps, it does make a nice corporate social network.
Interesting.
And I just want to say your thing about filtering out ads, ad block is great for Facebook.
I still have to go to Facebook.
You know what I mean? I'm saying for non-technical users, if you have to go, you're going to get, trust me, ad block.
Just be sure to switch it off for like
suddenly
my
happened to go, and these ads you're talking about, I did not realize they were as bad and as prevalent as they were until you suddenly turn that off. And
to weigh in, I don't want to go over time. I think everybody has said what they wanted to say on what was needed to be said on Facebook. From a personal level, I don't use Facebook that much. I do have an account. I occasionally interact. Perhaps a thing to mention here is that I recently used Facebook as a way to communicate with a friend who was coming to South Africa, who had there was some family issues, and we were trying to meet up, and my Facebook notifications were not popping through on my phone for some reason, and so I would constantly miss his messages to me, and we'd miss each other the whole time. Where if we had just used something like WhatsApp or SMS or email, I think it would have gone far smoother than if I tried to use Facebook and tried to jimmy, because Facebook's actually a complex platform if we get right down to it.
Absolutely.
It's one with a lot of toggles and switches which counts in its favor and against it. And in this particular case, like I, as a very casual Facebook user, couldn't figure out the settings in time to make my notifications come back. I don't understand. This is on the app, by the way, so surely if I set the app's notifications to go when I receive a message, ping me, it should work, but it didn't.
I don't want to steal the last word, but I just want to say the one place where Facebook is absolutely useful is the integration we now have with Facebook and iOS, from the perspective that there were a whole bunch of people that I didn't have phone numbers for that I now have phone numbers for, because it natively, if they've published all of their personal profile information, and I'm friends with them on Facebook, their phone numbers, their email addresses, things like that actually come through and natively pitch up inside my address book, which for me is a massively useful
thing. If you switch off your data connection, do you still have those phone numbers in your address book?
Yes. They're cached. It doesn't do a live lookup every single time. Yeah, it does synchronizations in the background. Yeah. And I mean, of course, you can go off and just say, don't show me the Facebook contacts if you want, or whatever. I mean, there's a choice for that. But that I think is a really, really useful feature. And for that, Facebook can stay.
Cool. All right. So with that, I wanted to add that the reason for the Facebook discussion was a tweet we received before the show. And that person indicated that their grandfather is actually really happy for something like Facebook. And to a degree, I can understand that. You want to keep up with what your grandchildren, great-grandchildren, your children are doing. And
if play words with friends.
Yeah, and if they're publishing updates, on a daily or weekly basis to Facebook, you as a grandparent, you don't get phone calls from your grandkids, your kids, let alone your grandkids. So very often, it's a great way to keep in touch with the family, because as someone who's had the privilege of knowing most of his grandparents, family becomes very important to you in your old age, and so that I think is worth saying and closing the show out with.